Welcome to the weekend edition of the Fast 5 Business News by Fear and Greed. I'm Michael Thompson and hello, Sean Aylmer.
Good morning, Michael.
Sean, on weekdays, it's all about the Fast 5, the top 5 business stories in 5 minutes. On the weekend, though, we still keep it to 5 minutes, but we're going to pick out the biggest business story of the week, the most remarkable story, the sleeper story, one that's flying under the radar a little bit, and then our favourite business story. Shall we jump straight into it?
Let's.
Shall I go first?
Sure.
Okay, the biggest story, I think, the one that really kind of had an impact on a lot of Australians this week was interest rates. Because, of course, on Tuesday afternoon, we had the Reserve Bank Board reduce the official cash rate by 25 basis points. Nobody was really surprised. Everyone had been calling for it. Business leaders and politicians and all the bank economists had been saying it was going to be happening, and it did happen. But what was surprising was the commentary from the Reserve Bank Governor, Michelle Bullock, afterwards. Basically, really, it sounded like the Reserve Bank was kind of almost begrudgingly giving this rate cut, citing the improved inflation figures, but saying, hey, hold your horses, there may not actually be many more still to come. So don't get too excited just yet. We need to see inflation coming down more. The employment market is still too strong. So, hey, don't get too carried away.
Yeah, she sort of doubled down on that on Friday when she was talking to Parliament as well. My biggest story of the week was all about Donald Trump. He slammed the Ukrainian president, called Vladimir Zelensky a dictator without elections, falsely claimed that Kyiv started the war against Russia. What it did was to get European countries angry, and they started to coalesce, work together, and actually stand up to Donald Trump. The other thing that Trump did this week was impose 25% tariffs on things like cars, semiconductor chips, pharmaceutical imports. That will hit Australia because we actually sell a lot of legal drugs to the US.
Sean, most remarkable story. What did you think?
Well, what a week for earnings season. Too many to talk about. In terms of property, kind of good news for data centers, good news for retail, not so good news for residential. Actually, some pretty good news for office blocks as well. People are returning to work. We saw that in Transurban's results. That's a toll road group. More people using tolls. That's because they're actually paying tolls because they're returning to work. The insurers told us that they've done well, but our insurance premiums won't be going up as much next year as they did last year. Happy about that. Tough time for the big miners, Rio, Fortescue Metals and BHP, all struggling with a weak China. Telstra pushing big time into mobile business. That was one of the standout results, I would say. Wesfarmers, Bunnings is booming. Anco sales at Kmart are doing really well. Worst of the week, probably Mineral Resources. $800 million loss. Needs an extra $300 million to upgrade a road at its new iron ore project in Western Australia. What about you, Michael?
A quick mention of what happened in politics this week. It started with some polls, really, that showed that Prime Minister Anthony Albanese is really quite on the nose. It's showing an increasing likelihood of minority government. With the PM's approval rating plummeting. We had a few bits and pieces that will probably go in the government's favour. The biggest of those would have been the interest rate cut that I mentioned earlier. The other thing, Sean, though, that I've got to mention is the return of Clive Palmer.
Ah, yes.
Because he's starting a new political party because he can't use Palmer United anymore. It's now going to be called Trumpet of Patriots. And I've got to say it with a straight face. One of these times I'm going to get through it.
No, you won't.
But it is based very much on kind of Trump-style politics. So we'll be watching this space. We'll certainly be hearing about it. I can assure you of that. Sleeper story. Did you pick one out for us?
Oh, look, I thought what was happening in South Australia is really interesting. The federal government and South Australian government will both pay, or together will pay $2.4 billion to upgrade the Whyalla steelworks in the hope of finding a buyer for it. It means installing an electric arc furnace to replace the ageing coal-fired blast furnace. What I think is really interesting is that the governments are prepared to pay billions of dollars to save this steelworks. Now, this is government intervention at the highest level. So we talked a bit about Rex, Regional Express, the government intervention there. This is multiples of that. Donald Trump, I reckon, has sort of emboldened governments around the world to make big calls on investing in manufacturing and things like that. We don't talk about it in those terms, but I reckon that's what this story's about.
Yeah, it's an interesting angle to it. A quick sleeper story for me was really just a follow-on from results and financial markets this week, is the fact that over the course of a week, the banking index is down something like 10%, something like that. With all the majors have been sold off, they've been priced to perfection now for so long that any kind of negativity was always going to hit them, and that's really what's happened this week. And so it's pulled the rest of the market down as well.
Can I tell you my favourite story?
Oh, please.
It's quick.
Because I know what you're going to do, and it is a fantastic story, so please go for it.
It is Jamie Dimon, the boss of JP Morgan, probably Wall Street's most influential banker. He teed off on Gen Zers, otherwise known as Zoomers. In a leaked report to the Wall Street Journal, he complained of slow decision-making, phone calls going unanswered, younger recruits being left behind due to work from home. He criticised Zoomers for spending all their time on the video app Zoom instead at the physical office. And I've got to quote him. Quote from Jamie Dimon, "Don't give me this shit that work from home Friday works. I call a lot of people on Fridays and there's not a goddamn person you can get a hold of." End quote.
That is a great quote. And you know what? That's the perfect place to finish up. Thank you very much, Sean.
Thank you, Michael.
There we go. 5 minutes and pretty much everything you need to know in the world of business. We'll be back on Monday morning with the top 5 business stories in 5 minutes. Don't forget to hit follow and join us online on Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, Facebook and X. I'm Michael Thompson and this is the Fast 5 Business News by Fear and Greed.